hope is the first step, and it's not hopeless. The idea of hope isn't a folly. It's
Totally.
An important fire that we need to stoke.
How nice. Do you want to do the intro, mate?
Welcome to A Piece of Kate with Kate Hulett.
And Emma Pegram.
We've never done it in that order, and it feels wrong already.
For those listening at home, we're recording live from the Spearwood Bowling Club. Give it up for Spearwood. It's Sunday night, it's 6 p.m, and it's about 20 days until the election.
Yep.
Final countdown, 3 weeks. Yes, agree, this was a crazy idea. We're like, how do you make things more hard for yourself? Do it live with an audience. Perfect. We wanted to talk tonight about, we thought we'd kind of conceive of this episode as the perfect project explainer. Kate and I are both big project people. We're like freelancers for life, project to project, interesting things, very passion-driven and heart-driven.
I describe it as putting my nose into stuff.
Totally. Or I saw that you put in the notes, big slashies, meaning, writer / producer / whatever. So yes, we kind of thought we'd go from the top, how we got here.
Yeah.
The perfect project.
And how maybe this is the perfect project that we could,
find for ourselves. So, how did we meet?
The how we meet story is so boring, so I'm just going to flash forward to next year.
Great idea.
Last year. So let's go forward to 2026. No, so last year we continually met often at your establishment, which is Wines of Weil, if anyone...
Quick shout out.
Yeah, needs a drink or a feed. Or in my shop, Kate Nable, guys. That never happened.
We both have struggling small businesses.
Yeah. And we would moan and productively whinge about the state of things. But it often kind of came back to like, okay, well, what are we actually going to do? And it ended up kind of revolving around we need to make our own media. And that was like, let's employ writers and commission photographers and make print a newspaper in WA. Yeah,
we got a bit obsessed with, we just talked so much about how all of the problems that we see and the things that we don't like about the world, a lot of them, especially in Western Australia, at the root of that is a lack of a kind of alternate narrative about what the world could look like. And we'll talk about that a bit more in this episode as well, I think, because the community independent model is trying to, I guess, model another way and talk about another way that politics could look. So, but yeah, we talked a lot about media and feeling powerless and feeling like we weren't represented and our understanding of what Western Australia wasn't represented
and it started that
in
kind
that narrative.
Of idea that the rest of the country thinks of us as so backward and gas obsessed. It just felt like the newspapers and the media just didn't represent us in any way at all. So we were like, okay, well, we'll just do our own. And then we were like, we can then narrate all the essays and we can make it something people can listen, of course, pie in the sky. Obviously there's one newspaper printer in Western Australia now that's owned by the West Australians. So anyway, there were some problems including that.
Logistical nature.
And it just kept rolling through the year, and we'd have pals that we'd meet up with and have these similar discussions, and with this intent that we would do something to try and fix some of the issues from at least and through at least the audiences that we knew and how our pals met or had coffee or interacted in the state of Western Australia.
Yeah, and I think I remember speaking to you very late in the year, and it probably wasn't long before you got asked, or maybe you had already been asked to be the community independent candidate, about getting to that point in your life where you realise that like they is us, when you start to realise like, oh, we're actually the ones who are meant to be doing the things and changing things. And I suppose it's
a huge...
the community independent, group, we're quite lucky that that's what was kicking around in your mind at that time.
I have that conversation in my shop so frequently when people come in and go, it's a lot of bloody empty shops here in Freo, isn't it? And they should really do something about that. And I'm like, who do you mean when you say they? And then we would talk for a while, and then we'd get to the point of going, you know that it's us, that we have to spend our money in those shops in order for them to stay open, and we have to arrange clubs or, you know, these guys that are stitching over there making some amazing badges. Like, they do things off their own backs, and that is, they should do something, and they did do something, and that just kept coming back into me thinking we've got to do this. And you know, we have started so many things between us. Oh my God.
Phones, please.
Our event manager.
The event manager of all people.
That is code for
Absolute
liven it up, girls.
Fines. Were you going to put some extra money on the
What a
bar, Kate?
strange choice for a ring as well. Happy birthday.
That song is to clear.
Wow. Okay, we'll take that off the bill.
I was going to say, just to, as someone who's known you for
Professional.
you know, a few years now, you already were this person who knew that they is us, and who you're a community person at heart, and you've pitched in on so many projects. You're an initiator, you know, and you are so good at attracting people into through ideas and through being, you know, having vision and inspiring people, and that's, you know, communities need that. And obviously that's why a lot of people were saying your name when Voices for Fremantle were looking for a candidate. And then you became the candidate, and
You can only say no so many times.
indeed.
Yeah.
And then basically at the end of January, I had actually screenshot the message
Don't
that
read
you
it,
sent
it's too
me to read it out, but I can't
embarrassing.
because
No.
my phone's recording.
cool.
But it was basically like, actually, this is something else I love about you. Not a big lead-in person in a text, which nor am I if I need something. I'm
Months
just
of
like,
silence.
hey, can you do this?
Yeah.
And Kate messages me saying, okay, so will you be my producer for the state campaign for the seat of
Yeah.
Fremantle? And I said, let's talk in the morning, but...
I'm at the movies.
Well, what did I say? I said,
Something
let's
like
talk in the morning, but basically, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I personally had grossly underestimated what a campaign entailed, and even more grossly underestimated what your involvement would be. I was like, be about 4 hours a day, 4 days a week for a couple
Bit
of
of emails.
weeks. Emails. Honestly, I can't imagine how many hours you have. I mean, 7 days a week, 18 hours a day. I mean, it's unreal how badly I pitched.
Same as everyone. No more than most people involved. Everyone's worked so hard. It's not
Yeah.
just me. But I can't get too close to you, which is the worst thing ever. So we kind of, I mean,
Codependent.
we will maybe race through this a bit quickly because I want to get to the part where we invented the podcast. But the crux of this is that we sort of decided to, or you had sort of already taken this approach to the state campaign, that it was like a project, like how you would, as a producer, say, which both of us have worked as creative producers, how you would approach a big community art project or a programming kind of project.
Yeah, and considering how people take in their information or are persuaded to attend things or learn about a project or a business or whatever. And I guess in a way, maybe psychologically, that helped me distance myself from myself, you know, like I am a project rather than it's me. So I didn't have to be so emotional about the wrinkles in the photos or, you know, how hideous it is to hear her voice. And so we could work on it as a project, like this idea, it was a concept, which then also made it for me, it just was easier to reiterate the fact that this was a community thing and not just me going, I really want to do this because I've got some great ideas. And
Totally. But I mean, also a very interesting way to start bringing in new approaches.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Like we were talking the other day about this interplay of the kind of traditional way of campaigning or of like, I guess, you know, touch points that are maybe more familiar to people like the corflutes and, you know, the ground campaigning aspect, which is huge and so important. And many of you who are in the audience have been putting in some serious kilometres. And then the new, like the, you know, communicating, the internet communications as
and it's interesting
Simone McGurk would
considering elections are 4 years apart for state or 3 years apart for federal. It's not like you can track media with elections, because what worked 3 years ago is quite different from what may work now. You know,
I
like,
loved the person who, when we
MySpace doesn't work
announced,
anymore.
when we announced a piece of Kate, someone reshared it and was like, Kate Hulett moving at cosmic speed, like picking up on new media. And I was like, I mean, it's a big call, but
Yeah.
I loved that.
Joe Rogan did it.
Cosmic
first,
speed.
Yeah.
But we got to the end of the state campaign and we had been saying, oh, we should, you know, this is such a good story. So much, actually, the state campaign, so much more eventful, really, than the federal campaign so far.
Yeah. Well, first we thought
Touch wood.
we'd do a little, like a guide, like write a how-to. So what we...
Did we? I don't remember.
Yeah, that was the origin. I got it, girl, don't worry. So I guess what we found was if you run a community candidate, the community really want it. And we don't have very many options of that in WA. And given that we were in a really, really safe Labor seat and we made the biggest swing in the whole of the state against a senior sitting minister, it said something that people do want better representation and closer, more community-oriented representation. So we thought if we can put a kind of guide together, then hopefully other electorates around the state could follow our how to put an idiot up guide.
Well, I mean I think that's true.
Independence for dummies.
I think another part of it that was, sorry, have I interrupted you?
No, go.
Well, I was just going to say there's another part that maybe, you know, can't be replicated, which is a way of communicating that people find accessible and entertaining and engaging. And that's what has been so powerful about you. And that's maybe how we got into podcast territory. Like you know, it was a great story, number one, and we wanted to talk about it more and have it kind of out in the, as a little case study. But also we just wanted, we wanted to keep speaking to people.
Yeah. I mean, the main parties absolutely benefit from our lack of understanding or knowledge about the way things work. They absolutely benefit from our disinterest and our disengagement from the process. And then as soon as you have someone that you might know, because we might have had a chat in the shop or might have worked on the Biennale together or whatever, and then I'm saying, what the hell is preferential voting? And I say, well, I'm going to talk about it as I learn about it. And then people are like, oh, that's interesting. That's pretty cool. And then suddenly there's thousands and thousands of people who are paying attention and thirsty for information. And, you know, you can see it as well in things like Punters Politics and the Australia Institute. You know, they're talking, and Juice Media, they talk really down the line and make it very accessible and normal. And, like politics is this. What we're doing now is politics is an everyday. It's how you buy your groceries and the method you have to get to buy your groceries and how you pay your rent and all that stuff. But we are actively separated from it in order that the major parties benefit. So we start talking about it. People start their ears prick up and then they're engaged and they're watching and they're interested. And we were like, let's just there's so much to talk about.
Yeah. Also, we developed, obviously, a massive codependency issue.
Oh, my God.
So we were like, well, we can't go back to our previous lives and
Yes, it's just
don't even know what they were.
Yeah, exactly.
This is, BC, before campaign.
Yes.
And we were like, we should keep this going. And then, federal campaign kind of entered the chat. And then we went, I guess we do both. I guess we do a campaign podcast.
I mean, the discussion was quite broad in, should we have a camera in the office and just record everything that's happening and just people can log on and watch us like it's Big Brother? And then I was like, no way, because I'll get cancelled in 30 minutes for saying something inappropriate accidentally. Or should we just record hunks of the day and put it as a podcast? Or, we kind of talked around different iterations of what would be interesting and accessible, and I mean, potentially we haven't met that objective, but what we decided was let's just do a little recap at the end of every day that comes out the following morning in an act of radical transparency and honesty. And it's really interesting because there's so many instincts that stop you from thinking about, we probably shouldn't talk about this stuff, but, just money stuff. Or
Yeah. I mean, even with the Section 44 thing, it was like, okay, we're going to talk about this on the podcast, I guess. It seems kind of crazy. But then as soon as we talked about it and, announced it to the world and told the media and got people talking about it.
This is the citizenship thing, by the way.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Section 44.
Constitution.
Nerd.
I don't know that it necessarily, in a way it did change the process because we had someone reach out as a result of hearing it on the podcast.
It resolved.
Which is pretty cool. But it also just changed our feeling. Like before we talked about it, we were walking around kind of like,
I was in a hideous daze for days. But it actually is that thing, problem shared. And then suddenly you had all these people going, hey, are you okay? And then and it just felt, it was actually
it's
breathing
honesty.
helper.
Yeah,
That's all
a breathing
helper. Okay.
Yeah,
I've forgotten how to speak.
Honesty, it releases everything.
And it's interesting because when I, last Friday, I spoke to the, High Commissioner in Canberra. One of my desperate pleading, hello, it's me again, Kate. We've never met. And he said, I'm in double digits now with citizens trying to relinquish their British citizenship. So you can imagine how many other citizens of other countries are trying to relinquish in order to run. But of course, not one of them was talking about it publicly because it's scary and a bit embarrassing, and it could, stop the whole thing moving forward, that you've got thousands of people behind you helping, and there's a huge burden to deliver, especially these community campaigns, because the major parties, the media, are absolutely dying for you to fold and fail and collapse, so they can go, ha ha ha, you idiot, we showed you, you stupid idiot. And so it was interesting to talk about it, because I was thinking, are we going to jeopardise the other candidates who are going through this as well? Is this going to be problematic but it had to resolve in one way or the other in 4 days. So it's like we can't not talk about it, because then we're not being honest the way we said we were going to be honest. So
yeah. And I think the other thing that I found interesting about it is, even if no one's listening, which they are, I promise.
Hello, Dad.
And even if, say, the media aren't listening, there's a sense that you are taking back some kind of control and some kind of power in terms of the narrative. Like when you're saying everything first, you're beating everyone to the story. That's quite powerful. And I suppose, that so for me connects back to where we were at the beginning of all this last year, when we were talking about that narrative that's so pervasive and that is often very difficult to cut through. But I think, just looking at the clock, maybe I want to talk a bit as well about, I can kind of see it, about where we're at now in the federal campaign. And, we've been, I suppose, talking a lot about how the podcast is a bit of an experiment in a communication style, similarly to how the community independent model is I wouldn't call it an experiment. I think it's established now and people are starting to understand more and more what it is. But we were talking yesterday about what it would actually look like if the kind of ideals of the community independent model were fully realised. And there's, lots of kind of principles to this movement and to our campaign and your platform that are maybe hard to imagine what they look like in their fullest realisation.
We can't see it. Yeah, we absolutely can't. And it's I think, everything is so interconnected, all the big issues that are affecting us. But the one thing which is the umbrella over everything, which we've spoken about before, is the idea of transparency through government. And if you have that resolved, almost everything else sorts itself out. And, the community independents are really focused on that transparency. And we can't even imagine politicians not being crooks, or absolute ridiculous, terrible deals being done on our behalf for the next 50 years. We can't imagine. And
yeah, there's a lot of, but if we, for example, how to vote cards, if you didn't have how to vote cards, people won't, know where to put their numbers. And it's just even people trying to maybe get their heads around exactly what an independent is and what their role is in Parliament. It's just like this, very fixed, I suppose, idea of how politics works and how it should work and how it will work. And even though we know that things work differently around the world and things have changed over time in our own place, there seems to be, like a rigidity to how people think.
Yeah.
And you're a classic, some of your detractors might say magical thinker.
Yes.
But you're able to see, a different version of things that we might be able to build. And, part of this is trying to kind of show that to people, I suppose. Would you say?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. But it's not that magical when you can look around the world and see examples of this stuff happening. And then we're like, well, it will never happen here. But of course it absolutely could. And many of the things that we talk about have happened here before, like free education and things like that. And it's not magical. They're just decisions that are being made. And often the decisions that are being made for us are so bad for us and so wasteful, and no person running a business would ever make these decisions ordinarily or treat their colleagues like the way they get treated ordinarily. They're not able to lie in advertising ordinarily. All these things that happen in politics are permitted, and we permit it. We permit it because we keep voting the same way, and we permit it because we go, well, that's just the way it is, nothing we can do about it.
Yeah, we perceive it as being too hard to fix.
Yeah. And I think the thrill is that there are great people in place in the crossbench, and the more we strengthen that with more independence, the better every Australian's lives will be, because the stronger the laws, the more honest and real the deals that are done, and the less short-term fighty kind of politics that we see now will be, and we will just be better off for it. And I think we're at this point of inflection where we just have to try it. And the terms are 3 years. This has been a Labor seat for 94 years federally. If you vote an independent and after 3 years you're like, that was the worst 3 years of our lives, you just vote another
just chuck
way.
her out. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, we're even that we've never, veered off this course. But then the options haven't been there, perhaps, that they haven't resonated. So we are trying to resonate, and we are trying to talk to everyone and meet them where they are. And I think some issues we need just to talk about them in different ways so they're relevant and
listen to people. And I mean, that's something that I've definitely noticed, being out in the community, going, listening to the team who are going door knocking, or you when you go door knocking, looking at the emails that come through, the messages. A lot of people who support the campaign don't necessarily agree with all of our policies or our views, but they're wanting to be part of a community who are listening to each other. And I think that gives people a sense of hope. And you talk about this a lot. I feel like that's a big thing that's come up for you when you're out talking to people, is hope.
Yeah, I mean, it is, almost every day I could go home and cry in a corner rocking because I'm so stressed. But the number of people that come up to me and say, oh my God, I feel hopeful about politics for the first time in my life, that's a huge honour and a huge weight and it's an obligation for us to continue down this path and give people hope. And you're absolutely right. Of course, not all of us in the room are going to agree on everything all the time, but if I can act with honesty and take the best advice and hear what the people want, I can explain my position and act with integrity as much as I ever possibly can in order to do the best for the people of Fremantle. And I feel like hope is the first step, and it's not hopeless. The idea of hope isn't a folly. It's totally an important fire that we need to stoke.
How nice. I was going to say, speaking of views in the room, I thought I might go to the question box, which, thank you very much. We definitely won't get through all the questions that are in here because there's quite a few, which is fun.
That's surprising. I was like, I'm going to have to write some questions to myself.
Let's see. What have we got here? Okay. Oh, I really like this one.
Can I read it?
I really wish I knew who the questioner was, but I don't. Now I'm going to read it out for the listeners. Okay, Kate, what do you think will be the greatest challenges for future generations of WA? Just an easy one to begin with.
I mean, housing is the first one currently, because not just future generations, current generations can't get into housing. And I think that having a safe place to sleep can resolve so many other issues in your life, and that should be our absolute priority. I mean, of course, a house is situated within an environment, and ideally we have a climate that isn't collapsing, but in the immediate housing, at the same time, climate, and I mean, I'd love everyone to have money in their pocket, so I would also talk about enough kind of social fabric services to help make sure people can afford to go to the doctor and get their teeth fixed and get an education that's equitable to their neighbours.
Good answers.
Housing, sorry, that was, I'll keep it short.
All good
Next.
answers. I mean, all good things.
What would you say?
My answer would be way too long.
Yeah, okay.
We can
Sorry.
revisit it on another
Tomorrow's
episode.
podcast.
Tune in. That's just a plug for future
I picked
podcast
that up.
apps.
Thanks. Subtle. Oh, no, your face.
We kind of covered that one. I might just, yeah. It was, what's the sentiment when door knocking? We talked about that.
Bugger off.
I quite like
The sentiment's actually, it's worth saying.
Okay.
The
Okay,
idea
what was the sentiment
of,
been?
The idea of door knocking or being door knocked is revolting to me.
People open the door and Kate goes, I'm so sorry.
That's
I'm
the first
so
thing I
sorry to
say.
be.
I mean, it's mostly how I wake up. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for existing. I'm a woman. I live with the guilt. What was I saying?
Capital T, capital G.
So I hate the idea of door knocking and I hate to be door knocked. The end. No. But when you do it, I'm so sorry to be here. I've had the most wonderful and engaging conversations, and they're, obviously you're going to them. It's not like this where you've all bothered to come out at night to sit here and listen to us ramble on, but it's so insightful and so, I mean, the main thing I take away from them is how it's like an endorsement every time that, oh yeah, okay, we're doing the right thing. This isn't an insane way to spend $400,000. We are doing the right thing, and this is really needed, and it's really important, and people have really critical issues with NDIS or domestic violence or she's pregnant and can't find a house. These things are life and death, and it's really important that we know our community and listen to them and represent them, and we are not getting that now. So for me, it's like just a huge endorsement.
Beautiful. What's the most surprising thing you've heard from the community while door knocking?
I mean, I keep just the amount of feedback about my fringe is surprising. Someone came in the office when I was sitting at the back yesterday and said, I don't like her hair. And I'm like, thanks for your time.
There was actually, I saw something in here before that was...
Fringe oriented.
Yeah, it was...
Oh my God. Give me a break.
Oh no, that's about you
If
being
a man
Prime Minister.
had a fringe, no one would ever mention it.
It was something like, when you're in Parliament, will you make a law that everyone has to get fringes?
I mean, obviously.
Compulsory. Yeah, that's great.
Surprising thing.
No,
I mean, something that was
the
quite
fringe
surprising the other weekend was, I think I said it was either climate change or something about the environment, and the guy physically bristled at that term, just like bloody hell. But then as we were talking, we talked about gas and gas exports and Norway and sovereign funds and all this sort of stuff. And then we were talking about exactly the same thing and we had exactly the same opinion. It was just talking about it in a different way, and that really struck me that, we talked about this the other day, how, the right wing in America, say, are so open to anyone. Anyone can join. Anyone can come along. But if you become too progressive and left wing, you can become very narrow in your acceptance or terminology for stuff, that actually everyone's like, yeah, I love swimming in coral reefs that aren't white, and I like walking through a forest that has trees in it. And yeah, I think the ancient rock art is probably quite important for our country. But we just have to talk about it in different ways, I think, the stuff, because we're all thinking the same stuff. We're all connected about the same. We care about breathing clean air, and we care about getting money from our resources. None of us like being ripped off, but we just need to find better ways to talk about all this stuff, so everyone's like, yeah, okay, I get you. We're moving in the same direction. So it's kind of a learning rather
That was
than
kind of
surprising.
be my answer on the future generations thing. It's like, I feel like young people, their futures is hopefully not. Hopefully we can avoid this, but I just think it's getting harder and harder to do that. And that is, that's the foundation that you need to create change on any level. So I think that's it's an important one. Consensus building, talking, conversation, overcoming differences, finding common ground. A lost art.
And I guess, if you consider two major parties, they are so tribal and football teamish that, that traditional fighting between them, and it's like, that's black, no, it's white, that's up, no, it's down, and it's so unhelpful. And actually it just excludes anyone that's like, well, I think that's grey, or I think that's there. And it's holding our whole country back from being how it should be, which is, have the best education and the best cultural output and the best clean energy and the best wealth funds and the best, all of that stuff we should be leading at. But we're actually trailing it, where poverty is really high and our education standards are going down and people can't afford to buy a friggin' house and we've got the most expensive rent. And it's that, I think we imagine ourselves, like when I was in the 80s and 90s, it was like Australia was always top of the leaderboard in the Olympics or whatever. And I'm like, well, we're really good at that stuff, I guess. And now I'm like, what are we really good at now, aside from like being pathetic with America or, other countries? We're just following them blindly. And I want us to be how we imagine ourselves to be, What was that answer to? Nothing. Okay, continue.
I mean, you had me with you wherever you went, which is true in life, as with podcast.
Come on.
Here's a good one. How do you feel about Fremantle's lack of funding for the arts, considering it is billed as the creative capital of Western Australia?
I mean, I rage about it frequently. I hate that the arts are made to fight with each other and compete for grant money, for crumbs, and then we are expected as an arts community to deliver so much with the crumbs. And there's that kind of idea of strategic underfunding where it's like, well, people are going to make music whether they've got money or not, and people will make art whether they've got studios or if they've got no money. And I think I like grants given out with no strings attached. I want people to be able to make art for art's sake, to experiment and play and try, because that's when magic happens and we come up with other things, like our innovation and the best output comes from messing around, And it's really hard if you're an artist of any type to mess around, because you've got to work 18 jobs just to pay your rent because it's just gone up $200 a week. And I can't do the thing I love because I got to pay the bills, and the bills have gone up so much, and sorry, I guess I won't be able to do that thing anymore. And it's, we should fund, it's like money goes where we care. And the other week, I know the circus, because the tents collapsed in Fremantle, so they had to do a performance in an old shed at the port, and it was dusty and hot, and the kids are like tumbling around on concrete. And the audience then experiences that and says, oh, this is how you value the arts. This is how you value this really crucial community service. And it's not how we believe, particularly the people that live in Fremantle are here because they love of all those things. And I hate that we are subsidising fossil fuels, $14 billion a year, and then we are asking for $5,000 grant to make an album. It's it's a real shame. It's really shameful. And they're all decisions,
Yes.
Every one of those is a decision.
Yeah. Speaking of things that Fremantle loves, there's another question here about sports. It's coming from a family. It's quite long. Our family's involved in multiple sports in our local community, and they're seeing the benefits that the sporting clubs provide to their local area. They say the Labor government has pledged $20 million to develop Wallyhagen Stadium with the City of Coburn.
State government, yep.
Can you support these proposed developments that are already in the pipeline? That's the question.
Yes. But back to what we've been talking about and what I bang on about is the fostering and developing and the facilitating of community as a general idea. And I think we started moving away from community and hanging out with our neighbours and stuff. We started building community out of our communities. There used to be, you'd sit on a front porch, so you'd know your neighbours, and you'd watch the kids playing in the street, you'd know everyone's name, you see if their bin's been left out, all those sorts of things. And now new developments are designed so you kind of drive into your garage and then you're in your house and there's no front, you don't know your neighbours, and there's nothing to connect you. And the thing that sports and arts offers is people coming out of their homes and congregating and connecting, and then you're like, oh yeah, we're humans and we don't have to fight on the internet. In our own homes we can, converse and deal with differences in person. And always struck me when you go to Europe and, they're living in dense cities, often small apartments and stuff. And in the mornings, there'd be the, old men sitting on the benches outside chatting. And at night, the families are out playing till very late, kids in the streets and stuff. And that they're not all agreeing on stuff, but they're pals and they're hanging out and they are a community and they trust each other and they know each other and they look out for each other. And we've kind of designed that out of our city as a whole, and sports offers somewhere for people to congregate. And I've spoken about it before, but I particularly worry for young families and young mums who are very far out of any sort of place to hang out, and I think we need to actively provide that, because then you have happier kids, happier families, kids who then have connection and pride with their other kids and their place. And then, it just helps reduce antisocial behaviour, helps reduce maybe pathways into crime, helps them, have friends at school that they can, it's so layered and so important, that kind of early childhood care. And I think sports is a real part of that. But 100%, of course. No brainer. Those things are such an easy investment.
I mean, also, we've talked about this a lot, the value of having an independent in Fremantle is more pressure, more,
totally.
asking for more, for more than the bare minimum of, the sporting facility that the entire community depends on being properly funded.
And the safer the seat, the less money, investment, care you get. And when you've been only one party for your entire existence, you are severely underfunded in all ways. I mean, the state campaign maybe was more visceral and tangible for people, because you would see that the spare parts theatre is crumbling and empty, and you could see that the port buildings are empty and underfunded and so on. Federally is just kind of ramps up into schools and hospitals and, those sorts of things as that, and roads that need investment. And it's really clear where the money is being spent, because people want to win a seat or not win a seat. I mean, even me running will be a benefit to the place, because Labor would go, bloody hell.
Got to give them some cash.
Want to buy some votes, boys?
I've got one last question that I think is quite nice, and then I think we'll end it there.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Before you make too many rogue calls. This one's nice. For people who don't know, Kate's a photographer. I feel like most people in the room are going to know that, but some won't. And this question is, actually, good luck answering this, but if you could take a photo to immortalise this crazy fun journey, what would it be? And landscape or portrait? Question mark. So specific. A budding artist, perhaps?
It would be landscape in orientation. What would it be? I mean, it would probably be something from election day. Something from that day was...
Or from the election day we'll have in 3 weeks, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
There's
maybe
another
the
one,
photo
remember?
is yet to come. I know. I mean, when we had election day and I was like, thank F, that's over. Oh, my God, I will never be able to do that again. And now here we are. And also there was the Notre Dame debate, which I was like, well, I'll run as an independent, but I'm not doing the debate. And they're like, well, you've got to do the debate. And I was like, no.
Okay, fine.
So I do the debate. And at the end of the day, I was like, I will never do that again. And guess what I'm doing on Tuesday night? A debate. Anyway, hell on earth. So that was not an answer. It will be the crowd at the party. I mean, that was the state election party was the funnest time of my life, I think.
Cute.
Yeah.
We'll report back. That's the end of the question box. Thank you, question people. If we didn't get to your question, write us an email or, prod us again. We'll come back to the box another day.
Yeah, we can hit the box every day this week.
3 weeks left.
T minus
Final words.
20 days. Yeah, 3 weeks left. Final words. Well, I'm going to leave them to Liliana, but I'm just forever in your debt of your support and faith in us as a group.
Okay.
Thank you. Or we could do that afterwards.
For the people listening at home, like and subscribe.
Yeah. Share it with a friend. Give us a good rating.
And for people in the room and anyone listening, if you haven't already, you can sign up on our website to subscribe for updates, volunteer. You can donate, you can grab a T-shirt, a call flute, and yes, Lily will have further call-outs in a moment. But this has been A Piece of Cake, live at the Spearwood Bowling Club.
Authorised by K. Hulett, 106 High Street Mall, Fremantle.